Again, nothing to do with my talk. You ready?
You ready to go?
Well, let's roll. Let's rock and roll this thing. People will filter in. They filter in. I understand it's after lunch. I'm the first thing after lunch. You're all a little tired. You're going to get tired as I go through. That's why I talk fast and I have a lot of slides and I go real fast. So let's get into it. But, oh yeah, I forgot to do this before I started. I'm going to run this, push this up here. We're going to force that. Oh, man, it won't let me do it. You know what? I'm going to do it this way. Let's go to, oh yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say. Create a file here. I hate when things fail because of connectivity. All right, so we're not going to start right now. We're going to do this real quick. Let's just do this in the repo. What's a good one? What's a good public one? There we go. That's an interesting place for it. I'm going to make a... let's go to license. And we're going to... Oh, that won't work, will it? That won't work. All right, well, we're going to go without it. Apologies, everybody. Or, give me 1 second real quick. Okay, push. This did not fail on me in rehearsal. Okay. I should be able to just force that up, right? Nope. Push protection. It thinks it's a real secret. All right. Well, we'll get to that point later. All right, everybody. Apologies. I'm Dwayne. I came in here from Chicago, and my entire mission in life is to help people figure stuff out. That's it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show the thing I showed earlier, but I'll show a variation on it. It'll be fine. What I was trying to do was push a honey token into a public repo and in real time show you the number of attacks on it. I'll show you one of the other ones I got running. Check out the Security Repo podcast. We are everywhere that you can get, your podcast out there in the world, Apple, Spotify. YouTube is mostly where you'll find us. Hit me up on the socials. I don't really do Twitter anymore. I'm technically there, but I don't really like it. If you want to talk about rock and roll, crochet, karaoke, or pretty much anything else, I'm happy to. In fact, one of the other things I love is whiskey. And I hear you have this place called Hale House around here that has a whiskey that they used to make here, Rocky Mountain. I'm planning on going there tonight. If you want to get some whiskey with me, I will buy you a drink if you say the magic words. So hit me up afterward. I'll tell you what the magic words are. All right, very quickly, I work for this company. We are Get Guardian. We are a company. If you didn't get stickers for that, I got stickers right up here by a projector later. But we're a company that focuses on secrets, finding secrets observability, helping people solve secret sprawl at scale. Our largest customers have 30,000 developers, and single individual developers use us. It's free for individual developers, actually. Well, some of our tools are, including honey tokens, which we're going to talk about today. So why do we care about secrets? Well, flat out, if you listened to Matt earlier today, you got to think like an attacker. There he is. Hackers want your credentials. I'm going to say some horror stories real quick, and I don't mean to make anybody uncomfortable or, hey, that sounds like my company, or that is my company. But if you get afraid ever, and security is a very terrifying place to live, just recite the Bene Gesserit litany against fear, and you will be fine. Fear will pass through, and you will be the only thing remaining. So this happened a little while ago. Anybody here use Cloudflare? I love Cloudflare. Not their fault, but Okta got attacked by a nation-state actor. Very clever nation-state actor that realized, hey, HAR files exist. HTTP archive files. And what HTTP archive files contain a lot of the time, they shouldn't, but a lot of the time, hard-coded credentials to make the whole thing work. Now, Okta did the right thing, and they notified Cloudflare and all the other customers immediately. We got broken into, HAR files got stolen, and you should rotate everything. And to Cloudflare's credit, they said publicly, we think we did. We think we got it. And then a month later, they actually got into their Jira, which led them to get into Confluence, let them into Bitbucket, which meant that their entire team, in 1 to as long as it took, did nothing but rotate secrets. That sounds fun. Circle CI, anybody get hit by this last year? These are starting to get aged examples, but there's tons. You just go to dark reading or bleeping computer and you can find many more. Circle CI, a single remote developer was running Plex, completely unpatched with default passwords. He posted a link to that in a Discord channel. Someone in that Discord channel went and said, hey, let me poke around in there. Hey, wait a minute. I can get into the browser from here. Oh, the browser's got a session token for the inside of Circle CI. Let me throw some malware in there and start harvesting any credentials I can dump. He took those credentials and then got into customer accounts and started doing the same thing. The day they figured this out was the same day a researcher said, hey, all my honey tokens went off inside of Circle CI. Something's going on over there. And that was also the same day they rotated all of the pipeline credentials and your builds broke. Not all of them, but almost all of them. This is one of my favorite stories because it can happen to anybody and it can happen to all of us. Who's ever copy pasted and you weren't sure where it went and you still went ahead and committed anyway? Oh, that's me. Well, in 2017, Toyota hired a subcontractor to take care of T-Connect, their mobile start repo. T-Connect does a lot of things. It's cool, really cool tool. Anyway, this subcontractor, for some reason, copies part of the repo into a completely unrelated public repo. Unfortunately, that contained a real data server key that went to 296,000 plus customers' data. Nothing too nefarious. Gmail, their emails, what model of car they were driving, and a bunch of other personal information, but no credit card information, so they're safe, right? They put out an apology email saying, you're probably going to get phished. Good luck. Oh, we rotated it. It's fine. That was out there for 5 years. It was 2022 that a third-party researcher actually finds this and says, hey, do you know this is here and it still works? I could go on and on and on and on and on. But we're kind of at the point where we have to start thinking in short-lived credentials. The fact that a key can last 5 years is just crazy. Like, we shouldn't be in that boat. Think in terms of hours, not days, for credential life. And if that sounds terrifying to you, it is, but it takes a little bit of adjustment. That's not on here. I can talk about that for days. The other thing is that we keep relying on code review, manual code review to solve this problem for a lot of companies. We just did our newest Voice of the Practitioner report. It's coming out next week, actually, on Halloween. Last year, we had interviewed 507 IT decision makers. 27% said, oh yeah, we rely on manual code review to solve this problem of leaked credentials, even though 75% of them said, yeah, we had a breach caused by a leaked credential. That didn't make sense. It went down. Like this year, it's only 23% of people that wrote back. It was a lot more people, but yeah. Oh, and this just happened last week. I don't know, any OWASP fans in the house? Any OWASP members? Woo, OWASP, go. They put out these top 10 lists every year. Not every year, but they put out top 10 like risks and things you need to be aware of. The mobile just updated, top 10 for mobile. And the newest one at the top is improper credential use. I'm going to bore you with like page after page of stats, statistics, DBIR. Any Verizon people in here? Thanks for the DBIR. I love it. I don't know if you work in that section, but I love it. But I can bore you with all that and say, look, we are doing credential usage wrong. And attackers know this. And this is what we're up against. It's a cat and mouse game. It always will be. But if you ask a lot of people, like, what are the actual ways we get in, or people get in now? Or what's the top 3 security concerns you have as your company? It's not 0 days. It's not misconfiguration vulns. It's our vulns or misconfigurations. It is business, email, scams. It is our BS. I don't work in that world. Forget BS. People click on phishing emails and leaked and mishandled credentials. I didn't tell the Uber story, but you could buy admin credentials for Uber for $20 online. A 19-year-old kid did this, and he went to the New York Times and said, hey, look at all the stuff I did, and made him look embarrassed inside. Wasn't a good day for them. Good news, we know exactly how attackers behave. We know so well that we wrote it down. And we keep modifying this. And this is the most condensed version that will fit on a slide of this. If you think there's a lot, look at the expanded view sometimes, and woo, it's a lot. This isn't the only framework. Lapsus caused us to update to have the lapsus playbook now. That's how MGM happened, like the whole spear voice phishing. The part we actually care about, yes, initial access, but we also care about these parts here where they're moving around the system. I'm trying every door handle, see what I can get into. I'm seeing every text file. Does it contain a secret? Let me go just try that. Except they're not reading it line by line and trying these things manually. They wrote a script. You can write scripts to do that. We know what they want too. We know exactly what they're after. They're after these two things: access to data and machine resources. Why do they want access to your data? Anybody? Starts with an R, ends with an ransomware. Yeah, and the sell it to whoever they can. Back to you, that's profitable, they'll do that. And then what are your machine resources? Anybody? Machine resources, why? Anybody? What's it? Crypto mining, yeah. Also to sell it on the dark web. How much does AWS instances access go for on the dark web? We heard earlier session talk about initial access brokers, or access brokers. I'm not going to tell you. Go research that one yourself on the dark web. Good luck. But it's pennies on the dollar. Pennies on the dollar. Until you get caught. And then it costs you, what, $5 to run $5,000 AWS infrastructure for an hour? I don't know if that's worth it. I'm not going to jail over it. Not buying those, I'm saying. So how bad is the problem of these secrets leaking everywhere? Well, we put out this free report. You can go there in an anonymous window. We do not want your information. If you're just going to download this thing, please just download it in an anonymous window. Just go to get it though. But the State of Secret Sprawl report, we put this out every year. So in 2023, we found a number of secrets leaked out there on to GitHub Public, specifically GitHub Public. Because I don't know if y'all know about GitHub Public, but there's an event, our api.github.com/events. That URL is the feed. It is everything that happens in public on GitHub. We pay attention to two things. Is public, meaning something that was private goes public, or has commit, or has committed? I forget the exact string, but it's the event where someone pushes something into GitHub. So basically a push. All right, let's still do this Price is Right style. Raise your hand if you want to guess. How many do you think we found last year? Matt, you can't answer, you know the answer. Anybody else though? Anybody else? Come on, just some guesses. You can be wildly wrong. I'll take $1 at this point. Anything. Number of secrets found, leaked on GitHub, public, just in the year 2023. Got to be more specific, man. They're not going to get you on prices, right? 300 million? 17.5 million. Other answers? 10 million. I'm going to give it to you because you're close without going over. It is 12.78 million, or thereabouts. Yeah, it's a big number. I mean, it's a relief that we didn't say 100 billion. Somebody guessed 4 trillion the other day. I'm like, I know it was a joking answer, but still, 4 trillion. It's a big number. Out of that, there 3.69 were unique. A shocking amount of that worked was actually valid, and that's the thing here. 90% of keys we find to be valid are still valid 5 days later, even after we write pro bono emails telling the committer, hey, this is valid, it's in public, do something about this. And then after 5 days, we stop watching it. But this is a growing problem, not a shrinking problem. So, I think one of the ways we can defend ourselves, because honestly, if we could just make developers stop committing hard-coded secrets, I wouldn't be giving a talk, and we would solve this in computer science, and we can move on with our lives. I believe there's a future we can do that, but let's face it, developers are going to do what developers do, which is what they're doing, and that's exactly what they've been doing. But there is a path forward in the immediate term. Buy yourself a little bit of time, a little insurance, a little bit of early warning signal that someone's in your system moving around, and trying that lateral and trying to find those hard-coded credentials laying about and getting to every door. I think that's cyber deception. We'll get to exactly how that means, but let's step back and think of cat and mouse. Cyber deception. Quick, brief, way too brief history. I think it starts here. This is the first time in our Western culture we have a reference to, hey, we said we're going to do this, but we did something else instead. And we still have Trojans to this day. Trojan.exe is still a thing. Shouldn't be, but it still is. We download the package. Anybody here old enough to have LimeWire or Kazam or Kazaa? Yeah, how many times that happened to you? I re-imaged so many machines. Anyway, we get up to Sun Tzu Hard War. Art of War. There's some debate if he's a real person or not, or amalgamation of other ideas. Anyway, be strong where you're weak, or weak where, and appear weak where you're strong, and strong where you're weak. It's the Karate Kid Part 2 defense. And then the Ghost Army happened, jumping way ahead in history. If you don't know about the Ghost Army, this is one of the coolest things about World War II. This is how we won the war. Mobilization takes a long time. Industrial mobilization to build actual tanks and planes takes a while. We didn't have all the things we needed to take back North Africa and then D-Day. So what we did was we went to Hollywood, said, hey, help us out. And they said, well, we know how to build balloons and props. They kind of look like the thing you want. At the time, surveillance was telescopes, binoculars, high flyover planes. That's kind of it. They didn't have drones. So this worked. We snuck all of the stuff in, blew it up, looked like all of a sudden the army was just here. Meanwhile, we're like actually pushing the stuff we actually built miles and miles and miles away. Next thing you know, we win World War II. There's a really awesome article written by the National World War II Museum about this. Highly recommend looking it up. Oh, and then this happened. Cliff Stoll, he's still alive, he's still weird, he's still awesome. Out of work astronomer has to find 75 cents missing inside of the National Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory computer system. At the time, it was $300 an hour to rent computer time. And 75 cents goes missing. That's day 2 on the job for him. So he's like, okay. He starts unwinding the apple, like literally going and digging deeper. And it's like, oh, wow, this is actually coming from Germany. But we can't, this is 1985, by the way, and we can't keep him on the line long enough to get a real trace because they have to go with an oscilloscope down the row this guy's calling into to figure out which connection is this person. So to keep him online long enough, his girlfriend's like, hey, why don't you just put a bunch of junk data online, like old movie scripts and just random garbage? Because again, it's 1985. It takes a long time to download anything. And it worked. He called that a honeypot. If you haven't read The Cuckoo's Egg, amazing book. If you're not a reader, go find The KGB, The Computer and Me. It's a Nova special from 1990. The coolest part about this one is everybody that's in it is an actual person who was involved in the actual story. There's no actors. It's just people that worked at Berkeley. I guess there's a couple actors, but there's interviews with the people, and they're like, yeah, that's actually what happened. Including the guy that went to jail over it. Because he was selling those secrets to the KGB, by the way. Then Fred Cohn took that idea. Thank goodness for Fred Cohn. And he wrote DDK. If you've never seen this, it's okay not to. But he said, what if we turn all the systems that aren't currently in use into honeypots? And then if you're in that system, well, we'll know that you shouldn't be here. And we have a way to track that. And he turned that into a formal kit. Fast forward a little bit more, and we get Alfred Uger, creator of Ballista, which later becomes CyberCop Sting, thanks to some consolidation in the market at the time. Jeff Mann has a really, really interesting story about this. If you ever meet Jeff Mann, ask him about Ballista. It's a really interesting story. I'm not going to repeat it. But Alfred Uger went on to say exactly this. These hackers aren't kids on a digital joyride. It's clear their motive is a financial gain, or is financial gain. I don't really believe there's specific moments in computer science history where it's like, well, I mean, there's like before Grace Hopper wrote the C compiler or the COBOL compiler, and then there's after. But there's like general movements that people kind of notice. I think this is about the era where hacking goes from the kids at MIT build a car on a roof and hook a fire hydrant up to a drinking fountain, which you can still go see if you could visit MIT campus. That was hacking. That was kids having fun and playing with engineering. What's possible? I still think that's the truest definition of hacking. Like, how does that work? Let's take it apart. Let's see what we can do with it. Let's have some fun. But most people that started hacking in this era started being the financially motivated and the people that actually wanted to cause problems. And hacking takes on this nefarious term. A few years later, hackers comes out and confuses the whole conversation. Then Augusto, who I've never met, he lives in Canada. If I ever run into him, I'm going to shake his hand and thank him profusely for doing this. In a honeypot message forum, I love email message forums. Like, that's our true history, and it's all there in public. He said, hey, I got this idea. Instead of a whole honey pot, I just got this one piece of data that shouldn't move around. I've been calling that a honey token. It's kind of like how Git was created from one, well, not created from one email, but like it's just 2005, Linus writes to the Linux email system, email exchange, and says, so I have this idea for like modifying or handling patches through the series of scripts I wrote. I don't think it's ever going to become a full-blown version control or source control system. 3 months later, that's renamed to Git. And we're all using it today. 97.9% of all code resides in Git. Same idea. It's that important, in my opinion. Canary tokens. Thank goodness for this company. Thanks. They're out of South Africa. You know, some people have strong opinions about them, but I think they're awesome. That's my strong opinion. In 2016, they added to their open source code base the ability to create AWS tokens in their Honey Token as a service system. Honey Token platform. You can run it yourself if you really, really want, but that's what they do for a living. Highly recommend checking them out in general. I'll talk about them later too. But then this idea of Canary token, Honey Token, gets kind of solidified into a little bit more formal definition in the enterprise side of the world. And after all, enterprise pays for stuff, so they get to define what they want. Then this happened in 2023. I didn't mean to see this talk. I was actually good at RSA to see Eric Idle. That's not why I was there, but I went in this room to see Eric Idle. He was talking next, and I caught the end of Kevin's talk. And he says from stage, Honey tokens are your early warning signs about the fact that we just have to assume breach. The walls don't work anymore. There's no such thing as a perimeter. That's kind of dumb now. They're in. Just assume they're in. How do we stop that? And Honey tokens are one of the ways he said. So I think we're in the modern era that if you're not deploying Honey tokens, well, you're in the right place, because that's what we're going to talk about next and how to use them. So, definition. This is how we define it inside of Git Guardian. You can argue other things, but this part I think is always going to be true. They trigger alerts that reveal at minimum the IP address of who triggered it. It can do other things. Let's talk about why it can do other things and how it can do other things. But this is our definition. This is a definition. If we go back to the first mention of it, it's like a piece of data that shouldn't move around. Our definition, specifically AWS, you can go build yourself using our code. It's open source. It's called GG Canary. This is the architecture. And it's really just 2 Terraform scripts at the end of the day. The first one builds AWS users that have no permissions. Ideally, if you're going to do this, build that on a brand new AWS account that has no money attached to it whatsoever, if you can. And then just let it sit there. The other side is you build a Lambda function that connects to an S3 bucket that's populated by CloudTrail. If anybody tries to get into any of these accounts, CloudTrail dumps that into S3. Lambda says, is that on the list? That's on the list. Cool, fire off an alert. And ours says Slack AWS SES and send grid out of the box. It's open source, do whatever you want with it. This is one idea of it. You can also set up File Watcher on files that only exist because you want them to exist so people will touch them. If I'm an attacker and I see passwords.txt, I am probably not going to touch it because I think that's a honeypot. However, if I see something called AWS project.md, ooh, what's in there? I'll probably scan that. If I see anything .env, oh yeah, I've just hit pay dirt. Because env files are great, but side note, if you're using env files all over the place, really look into SOPs. It's from Mozilla. It's free open source. You can encrypt files in place, and you can move around. Like, you can encrypt down to the line levels. You can have a text file that's completely readable except for one line. And then unless you have the algorithm and the key to get into that file, you'll never be able to read it. It's free. We should all be implementing this. This is what Mozilla does internally. All right, so we got some options here on how to use how to get a Honey token. Now, I just showed you ours, but there's a lot of other ways you can do this. You can build what we built from scratch if you know Lambda inside and out and CloudTrail, and the equivalent on Google, and the equivalent on Azure, or any system you want. That architecture just generally works. Make something, watch a thing, make it fire off an alert if it does a thing. Like I said just a second ago, and I got ahead of myself, I meant to say it here. If you just set up a text file that's like, all right, if someone touches this, give me some kind of system alert. You're gonna get some false positives on that for sure, but at least have something, and that's free. Who has dummy accounts set up, like honey token accounts? Anybody? Like, you have just fake accounts set up in your system? If anybody ever hits those accounts, tries to log into those accounts, you know something's wrong. Again, it costs you nothing to have an extra email user that has nothing to do but sit there and wait for something to ping it or to try to get into it. Especially if you can hide stuff inside there. That's kind of fun. I already talked about us. Space Siren. Huge shout out to Space Siren. There was a project in 2015, 2017. It got shut down in 2017 from Bitbucket called Space Crab, which is still my favorite name for any project of all time. I think Zarf from the OpenSSF is my new favorite, but Space Crab's awesome. And it was that. It was the exact same thing we built, except they had an enumeration problem, and it was pretty easy to tell at scale if it was their honey token or not. Space Siren forked, fixed that problem, and it's free open source. It does require a little bit of AWS know-how. I should say know-how. I don't know how that got erased. And then there's Thinks. They've been doing this for the better part of a decade, just releasing it as open source. Like, hey, go put it out there. But you can do it on Docker. If you want to run your Docker infrastructure locally, go for it. It's free. And then there's a bunch of stuff off the shelf that just you can just use. If it's like, I don't want to run infrastructure for this, cool, don't. In fact, we highly recommend you don't do that. Because one, if you set it up wrong, you set it up on your own infrastructure and someone actually gets in, they're actually in. It's not some other system that they're not supposed to. Anyway, we'll talk about deploying these things later. But canarytokens.org, if you're going to start, if you've never heard of a honey token before and you're just like, I just want to get my hands on this and just play around in the system, canarytokens.org is free and you can build one at a time honey tokens. But it's not just honey tokens. Again, this is Thinkst product. This is their Thinkst platform. You can make fake credit cards. You can make PDFs that can track IP for opens that can be used in court. Like, they provide this as a free service for the internet. They're awesome at it. And they're adding new stuff all the time. What was the thing? Oh, they were, last time I talked to them in person was RSA, and they were building CSS tokens. So if someone copies your CSS to build a fake login screen, you'll get an alert. And I love that. I absolutely love that, because that CSS should only exist in this place. It's brilliant. All right. Then they actually sell an enterprise version of that if you want to scale up. You need like 5,000 tokens, 10,000 tokens, 100,000 tokens across your systems. That's what Canary.tools does. We make one, Get Guardian, not going to lie. That's kind of how my boss lets me come give this talk, is to mention that. But it's really, if you're already a Get Guardian customer, it's a great value add. If you're not, I doubt that's why you're going to become a customer, but I'm happy to talk to you about that. Sentinel does this, but I have talked to multiple people that use Azure day in, day out, and they've never heard of Sentinel's version of this. It's in the documentation. I don't know why people don't talk about it. Oh man, I wrote this before CrowdStrike happened. That's a side. I got enough time. I got enough time to do this. Anybody want to guess how much damage the CrowdStrike thing happened? Like the CrowdStrike event that crippled the global economy, almost put Delta Business out of airlines. How much that hurt them as a company? They're like, this is the proof reputational risk doesn't exist. That's today. That's 0.9 down. But if we look at 6 months, they're up 1.24%. For the year, or for the year to date, they're up 22%. That's reputational risk. Every time you say reputational risk out loud, I want you to remember that picture and remember they crippled the economy, stranded people that I met in airports that couldn't get home to their babies. Reputational risk isn't a thing. Anyway, Proofpoint. I love Proofpoint. They're good people. They have Identity Threat Defense Shadow, which is way too long of a name. And that's what I told the guy one of the builders of it, when I met him at a conference last year. It's awesome though. If you're already a Proofpoint customer, go bother your reps. I'm not here to sell you any of these, quite honestly. I'd rather you build them and play with them and get the idea in your head of, I'm gonna set up traps everywhere. Because it's just the beginning. Because if you can set up these traps, like, why not set them up everywhere? Why not put them in Jira? Well, I'll get to that actually. So let's talk about best practice. How do you actually use these things if you go build them, buy them, however you get your hands on them? Put them in private places. The whole point is that someone shouldn't have access to it. So if they touch it, they shouldn't have touched it. What I tried to do earlier, and I'm actually kind of glad that failed now that I think on it, is you shouldn't be putting things like that in public, because then everything's just going to hit it. So I was trying to push that out on GitHub public. If I threw it in Pastebin, it would have worked, because Pastebin has no protections. But GitHub introduced this idea of push protection against secrets. Some secrets. The list is growing, but if it's specific API keys that they recognize, then they will say, hey, you can't do that. And that's what happened to me. That's why I couldn't deploy that earlier. They didn't know it was a honey token. They just saw it as an AWS token. AWS tokens are very structured. Generic tokens, it can't see. It doesn't know what that is. If you're not registered with their program, it's probably not going to work with you. So if you do build a tool that has an API, go talk to GitHub and say, hey, can you do this for me? And they will be like, yes, let's talk. But that only works for public repos. If you can buy that for your private repos, and then that whole is public event, that's 17% of all the secrets we find online are on GitHub Public, are a result of something that was private that went public before being sanitized. It's just somewhere in the Git history. That includes a lot of the valids too, and a lot of the .env files, or env files in general. So put them in places where you shouldn't be in there. You shouldn't be looking around. This is not a public place. Throw them in Discord, a public Discord channel. You're just going to have them pop off a billion times. There's no value to that. However, put it in your private Discord, that's a different thing. Put it in your private Slack, it's a different thing. Why is someone touching this in Slack? Why is someone in this channel that we specifically told people out loud in person, this is here as a trap, don't go in there? And if they go in there and like, why did you go in there? Then you have a whole security conversation with them about what to do and not to do at work. CI environments. That's the example I showed earlier. That's a real thing. Circle CI got breached. There we go. We know about it because of this. Vault. One of the best places you can put it is in your vaults. Why? Because it's your vault. Active Directory is the same thing. Just throw them in there. If someone's in there snooping around, saying, does this key work? You should know about that before that actually works. It's really, really easy to put a honey token places, except for GitHub Public personally right now, with AWS, as I failed earlier. But think of these in terms of one-to-one ratios. One honey token goes in one place. If you put the same honey token in 100 places and it goes off, where'd it go off at? Someone's in, but what does that mean? Which environment, which repos got compromised? You want to know exactly when it goes off. Oh, they touched that, that's here, they're in there. Now we can go run our script and rotate all our credentials. That's my dream world, that everybody has that script. Does everybody have that script yet? Like if you just run a script and it just magically rotates all of your credentials across your system. Oh man, one of these days someone's going to raise their hand. Until then, think about that system. It's beautiful. You can just script that. You don't even need AI, you don't need AI to make that happen. All right, one-to-one. Automate. Automate the best you can. If you ever want to see a really bad bash script that has no documentation around it, that's meant to be used as a Git hook, but doesn't explain that's meant to be used as a Git hook anywhere in the code, you can visit my repo that did that. I've still never updated it. I mean, keep meaning to, but it's one of those, like, I'll get to it for a year now. However, you can feed it to ChatGPT and it'll tell you everything that's going on. But I think in terms of automation, yeah, you can onesie-twosies this, and yeah, you can ask a developer to deploy this. You can also ask that same developer to stop hard coding their secrets. You're going to get the same result. Think in terms of automation. This is where your security engineers are your best friend. Anybody here a security engineer? Oh yeah, security engineers are my heroes. You guys are honestly the best people. We keep hearing it like we're the department of no in security. We keep showing up and saying, you can't do that. You've done that wrong. And security engineers are the people that are literally capable of saying, here's a bash script that fixes this. Here's a better way. And you're the people making the easy way, the safe way, not the store, the safest path. And that is the future. If we can make the easy path, the safe path, we win. Because right now, the easy path is not even more close to security land. We keep showing up and saying, you're doing it wrong, and nobody likes to have that conversation. As Matt said in his opening, like if they see you coming and they get like nervous and mad, that's not a good security program. I'm going to say this only because I am at a security conference, and especially one with the CTF going on. Think in terms of blue team. Remember where the lines are. Touching an IP address isn't illegal. Doing anything on that IP address might be. Unless it's your IP address, then you go nuts. Whatever's there. It's your home lab. Go nuts. But your point isn't to go track these people down unless specifically that's your job. We got any federal agents in here? Any FBI that can admit it out loud? Any NSA? Any CSA? CISA? CISA? CISA are my heroes. I love those people. They're doing it right. They're helping us all. They're not tracking them down, though. They're handing them over to the other teams. But your job is to get them out of there. So let's set up some rules. Like this went off. great. And we see the same thing going off by the same user agent from the same IP addresses, same range, over and over again over a half-hour period. Oh, guess what you should block? Those user agents from those IP addresses. Sumo Logic has a great tool that does that around email. I don't remember the name of it. I can't tell you anything more about it, but if Sumo Logic has rule sets around that, and the idea of blocking by user agent is a much cleaner idea than trying to do it by IP ranges, because I don't know about you, I can get a new IP address in about 30 seconds and keep getting a new one every 30 seconds. There's this thing called Tor. I don't know if you've heard about it, but that's exactly what that gives you, that ability. Not that you should use it to download things, but just saying you could. Oh yeah, and if you think traditionals are at risk, rotate them. Your job on the blue team is keep safe. Again, build those things that auto-rotate and auto-deploy. I almost took this out of here, and someone came up to me once after I gave this talk and was like, thank goodness you said that. Because I was about to go, honestly, write an email to my boss about we need to deploy this in every system we have. I'm like, cool. I still think you should write that email, but he's like, but you know, you're right. It is a journey. Maybe you guys should go play with this first and like actually figure out how to implement this. I'm like, that's a really good idea. Go slow. CanaryTokens.org. Just go play with one. Just go see what it does. Then show that little proof of concept to your team. See what they think. They'll probably be into it, especially if it doesn't cost much. Free to cheap. You can understand the scale and architect the whole thing later, but you got to get that initial buy-in, and that starts with the conversation. It starts with the journey. I said it earlier, but don't put them in public because then they'll just go off. So I can't check my honey token from earlier because I couldn't deploy it. So this one never got activated. But here's one from here's one from the other day. And I want to see is open and see. Sorry, it's grayed out. But this was in public before I revoked it for a total of, I think, 42 minutes. Earl from Bot03. I threw this in a public repo, and I did it actually in the interface. You can get around it with a command. But this one, okay, let's go back to the beginning of time with it. The first thing that hit it was AWS internal. So I guess I did this one back in June. Sorry. This wasn't Tuesday. This was the June one. I delete them sometimes. AWS hit it first. Why did AWS hit it? Because I put it on GitHub. GitHub said, hey, this shouldn't be here. Fired an API call to AWS to say, hey, this got put in public. AWS said, thanks, and ran attach user policy. The specific policy they attached were to strip you of all rights and to quarantine you. So AWS is doing this right. So that's the first thing. So if you're like, well, what happens if I did put this on my own system and somebody hit it? Well, that's what would happen. One of the next things that hit it was this little Git Guardian symbol. That's us. We have multiple data centers, and we have multiple data centers doing this, and we're always looking in public for public things, and we scan and try to validate, hey, is this real? And that act of validation triggers it. Oh, I forgot to mention that, didn't I? Yeah, the validation of it. So it only fires if someone tries to use it. And you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. You just told me earlier that no one's going to go through and read line by line and try all of these. Nope. But then we have things like TruffleHog exist, and we exist, and other scanning tools exist that have a validation step. I found a secret. Let me go try it. Now I'll give you the report if it worked or not. It is trivial to write a script with TruffleHog or one of the other services out there like us to just go and run it 24/7. Look at api.github.com/events. Look for these events and go try this. I know that because we built that. That's literally the origins of our company. Yeah, I don't know where any of these IP addresses are. Seriously, this is the one that blew my mind when it was like 90 events in like a 40-minute period. It's all taken down now. But that's what I wanted to show in real time, how fast that is. Because that was about a minute after I deployed, and then you can see the timestamps. That was 2 minutes later. That was 3 minutes after that. Then it just starts flooding. And then it's as fast as the machine. Somebody said, I was just at Bruce Schneier. I was just at OSS, or Sauce Fusion down in Atlanta. And Bruce Schneier was there. He said, AI is not really going to speed up attacks because we're already being attacked at machine speed. The gentleman's question from earlier from another talk is like, well, why couldn't I just do that with a Python script? Dead on, yeah, because that's what they're currently doing. That's what Bot 03 is. Let's run some Python, everybody. Love it. So, wrapping up here. This isn't going to change. This is going to be the same because this has always been the same. There's always been a cat. There's always been a mouse. There's always been a castle wall. They've always gotten through. We got to be prepared for that and kind of evolve for it. What we need to do is be able to act so fast that it throws them off their game. If I'm in a system, I run my script and automatically I get kicked out and I can't get back in. If I am a ransomware as a service person, if I'm an attacker as a service, I have no idea how to get around that. My script says, do these 8 steps. If any of them fail, move on to the next one on the list and try it till it works. We have to be so fast on defense, it feels like we're playing offense. Honey tokens give you a way to do that. They don't take a lot of effort to set up. In fact, you can just set them up as a service and they're good to go. And you can know immediately, hey, somebody's in here that shouldn't be in here. What's their IP address? What's their user agent? Ban. Then go clean up the mess that's left behind. Many ways to do this. And my hope with this is not to make you go buy ours or go buy Finks or go like even build specifically what we build, but to think about this idea of somebody shouldn't have touched that. Now I know who they are because they touched it, and I can do something about that pretty quick. And again, just because I'm a security conference, you're not the red team. You're the blue team. If you're doing this, you could do this as a red team. There is an application. We'll talk about that if you come to drinks tonight over at Hull House. Again, anybody wants to go to get whiskey later? I love whiskey. I'm Dwayne. I live in Chicago. This is the wrong slide. Yeah. Anyway, I'm Dwayne. I live in Chicago. Check out Security Repo Podcast. We talked to a lot of interesting people. We've got some people from MITRE coming up in a few weeks. Matt's going to be on it. We got a number of Jason Haddix has been on it a couple times. Tanya Janka. Just check it out. We got a lot of great content. It's all free. And yeah, that's it. The slides are up there at that tiny URL. And thanks very much for having me. Any questions? Got time for like a few. None? Covered it that well. All right. Yeah. They actually have a, I think they call theirs Canary token. I think it's been a while since I looked it up, but it's in the documentation. Just look for Microsoft Sentinel Azure Honey token, and it's one of the links. You'll find a document for it. Again, I've never met anybody that knows anything about it. But yeah, absolutely. They might, but there's like 500.
See you then.